The Indiana Fever just got robbed on national television, and even Caitlin Clark couldn't contain her rage from the sidelines. When Lexie Hull takes a vicious elbow straight to the jaw and somehow gets called for the foul herself, you know something's seriously wrong with WNBA officiating. But wait until you hear what the league did next. This isn't just about one bad call, it's about a pattern that's destroying an entire season, and with 5 players already sidelined, the Fever can't afford any more gifts to their opponents. You won't believe what head coach Stephanie White just revealed about the officiating differences. Let's dive in. Every single time a game happens in the WNBA, somebody's getting targeted, somebody's getting hammered, somebody's taking shots that would get players ejected in any other league. The Indiana Fever walked into Target Center in Minneapolis with more players in street clothes than some teams have on their entire roster. 5 guards out. 5. That's not a basketball team anymore, that's a medical ward trying to play professional sports. Think about this for a second. Caitlin Clark has been sitting on the bench for 6 weeks now with a groin injury that just won't heal. Sophie Cunningham tore her MCL and she's done for the year. Sydney Colson's ACL is shredded. Season over. Ari McDonald broke a bone in her foot. See you next season. Even their emergency backup Odyssey Sims could barely walk but still dragged herself onto the court because there was literally nobody else left. This is what the Fever are dealing with right now. The injury report reads like a horror movie script. Clark hasn't played since July 15th when she grabbed her groin and limped off the court. 6 weeks later, she's still not practicing with the team. She showed up in Minneapolis for shoot around on Sunday, did some light drills, and that was enough to send Fever fans into a frenzy. But here's what nobody's talking about. While she was rehabbing that groin injury on August 7th, she suffered a bone bruise on her left ankle. Yeah, she got hurt while recovering from being hurt. That's the kind of cursed season Indiana's having right now. Sophie Cunningham's injury might have been the most devastating of all, and not just because of what happened on the court. This was the player who stood up for her teammates, who brought that edge Indiana desperately needed. Remember when she defended Caitlin Clark with that flagrant 2 foul back in June? That's the kind of player you can't replace with a hardship signing. When Bria Hartley rolled into her knee on August 17th, you could see it on Cunningham's face. She knew immediately. MCL tear, surgery required, season finished. The double whammy came on August 7th in Phoenix when both Sydney Colson and Ari McDonald went down in the same game. Think about that. 2 guards, both season-ending injuries, same night. Colson tore her ACL in the first quarter. McDonald broke a bone in her foot in the 4th. The Fever went from having depth issues to having nobody left to run the point. They had 9 players available for their next game. To 9. Most high school teams have deeper benches than that. What makes this even more painful is how well some of these players were performing before getting hurt. Ari McDonald wasn't just filling in, she was legitimately keeping the Fever afloat. In the games after Clark went down, McDonald was averaging double-digit points and providing the defensive intensity this team desperately needed. Sophie Cunningham was shooting 43% from 3-point range. These weren't just warm bodies, they were legitimate contributors who are now watching from hospital beds. Let me paint you a picture of what this means in real basketball terms. Kelsey Mitchell has played 37 minutes in games where she should be playing 28. Lexie Hull went from role player to carrying the entire wing rotation on her back. Aaliyah Boston is trying to anchor a defense where half the players don't even know the defensive schemes because they just signed 3 days ago. This isn't sustainable, it's barely survivable. And then Minnesota happened. Oh boy, did Minnesota happen. 4th quarter, Target Center, national television audience watching. The Fever are already down players, already exhausted, already fighting an uphill battle against the best team in the league. Lexie Hull is doing everything she can on defense when Kayla McBride grabs a rebound. Hull steps up to pressure, standard defensive basketball play. What happens next should have been a turning point in the game, but not in the way anybody expected. McBride swings her arms to protect the ball, but this wasn't your typical protective move. Her elbow comes around with serious force and catches Hull square in the jaw. We're not talking about incidental contact here. Hull's head snaps back, her legs buckle, and she goes down hard. The crowd gasps. Her teammates are in shock. Aaliyah Boston's standing there with her hands over her mouth, looking like she just witnessed a car crash. Here's where it gets absolutely insane. The referees blow their whistles. Everybody assumes McBride's getting called for the obvious foul, maybe even a flagrant, but no, they call the foul on Hull, on the player who just got elbowed in the face. The player who's on the ground holding her jaw. That player gets whistled for the foul. The replay makes it even worse. You can see McBride look directly at where Hull's face is before swinging that elbow. This wasn't a basketball play that went wrong. This was somebody who knew exactly what real estate Hull's face was occupying and decided to swing anyway. Even Tim Fudd, Azzy Fudd's father, who was sitting courtside, tried to defend it as an accident, but the footage tells a different story. Watch Aaliyah Boston's reaction in real time. She's standing right there when it happens. Her immediate response isn't anger, it's complete disbelief. She covers her mouth with both hands and just stares. Natasha Howard, who's supposed to be one of the enforcers on this team, does absolutely nothing. No confrontation, no standing up for their teammate, just watching as Hull writhes on the floor in pain. This is what's been driving Fever fans absolutely insane all season. When Caitlin Clark gets hammered, nobody responds. When Lexie Hull gets elbowed in the face, crickets. Where's the teammate who gets in McBride's face? Where's the enforcer who makes it clear that you can't do that to our players? Sophie Cunningham would have been all over that. She's the one who actually stood up for her teammates. But she's in a knee brace on the bench, season over, watching her replacement get abused with no consequences. Social media exploded immediately. One fan posted, "How is this not an ejection? If this were the NBA, the player would get ejected and suspended for a game or two." They're not wrong. The NBA had over 25 ejections last season. The WNBA had 6. 6 ejections in an entire season where players are getting elbowed in the face, shoved to the ground, and body checked on a nightly basis. After review, the officials upgraded it to a technical foul. A technical for an elbow to the face that sent a player to the floor. McBride stayed in the game and scored 13 points on perfect shooting. Meanwhile, Hull's checking her jaw on the bench, wondering if anything's broken. The message is clear. You can assault Indiana Fever players and face minimal consequences, but Hull wasn't even the only Fever player to take a shot to the face that night. Earlier in the third quarter, Kelsey Mitchell got hammered by Jessica Shepard. Another swing, another face shot, another Fever player on the ground. That one got called a flagrant one, at least, but the pattern is undeniable. Teams know they can get physical with Indiana, and the refs won't protect them. Head coach Stephanie White tried to be diplomatic after the game, but even she couldn't hide her frustration. "The physicality, we've been talking about it all year," she said. Then she dropped this bomb. "It was called differently than Friday's game." Translation: the refs are making it up as they go along, and Indiana's always on the wrong end of it. This isn't happening in a vacuum. The entire league knows Indiana doesn't get the same whistle as other teams. When the Lynx drive to the basket, they get calls. When the Fever drive, they get hammered and play continues. It's been happening all season, but with half their roster injured, they can't afford to lose any more players to physical play. That's really just assault. Despite everything, despite being down to 9 players, despite the biased officiating, despite having emergency signings running the point, the Fever refused to quit. Kelsey Mitchell went absolutely nuclear in that Minnesota game, dropping 26 points and keeping them in it until the very end. She's averaging over 20 points per game since Clark went down, carrying an offense that has no business functioning. Shea Petty, signed on a 7-day hardship contract 5 minutes before tip-off, somehow dropped 16 points off the bench. Think about that. A player who wasn't even on the roster a week ago is now essential to keeping this team above water. Lexie Hull, with a potentially fractured jaw, stayed in the game and kept fighting. That's not just basketball, that's pure heart. Aaliyah Boston has been the anchor through all of this. While everyone talks about the guards being injured, Boston's been holding down the paint against double teams every single night. She's averaging a double-double while being the only consistent defensive presence on a team that's literally running out of bodies. Her 14 points and 13 rebounds against Minnesota came while being banged around all game with no calls. The surprise contributions have been remarkable. Ariel Powers, another emergency signing, has had to learn the entire offensive system on the fly. She's out there running plays she learned in shoot around that morning. Odyssey Sims is playing through her own injuries because there's nobody else. Every single player is giving more than they should have to because the alternative is forfeiting games. Here's what makes this even more impressive. The Fever are still in 8th place. They're 19-18, clinging to that final playoff spot by their fingernails. They're 1 game ahead of the Los Angeles Sparks with 7 games left. Every single game from here on out is basically a playoff game. Lose 2 in a row and you might be out of the postseason entirely. The remaining schedule is absolutely brutal. They've got Seattle on Tuesday, then a West Coast road trip to face the Sparks, Valkyries, and Mercury. 3 of those 4 games are on the road where Indiana's been terrible all season. Then they come home to face Chicago before before closing out with games against Washington and Minnesota. That final game against the Lynx might determine whether they make the playoffs or go home. But here's the thing that has everyone holding their breath. Caitlin Clark is getting closer to returning. She participated in shoot-around on Sunday for the first time in over a month. It was just light drills, what Coach White called very low-maintenance stuff. But it was something. She's running full court now. She's doing basketball movements. The question isn't if she'll return anymore, it's when. The problem is nobody knows when that'll be. Every report says something different. ESPN suggested August 26th might be the target date. That's the home game against Seattle. But White keeps saying there's no timetable, that Clark needs multiple full practices before she can play, and she hasn't even had one yet. The team is being incredibly cautious, and given that she's already had 4 separate injuries this season, you can understand why. Think about what Clark's return would mean for this roster. Right now they're playing Kelsey Mitchell 40 minutes a game and praying she doesn't break down. With Clark back, suddenly Mitchell can rest. The floor spacing improves immediately. Boston gets easier looks in the post. The entire offense has someone who can actually run it instead of whoever learned the plays that morning. Clark's averaging 16.5 points and 8.8 assists in the 13 games she's played this season. But those numbers don't tell the full story. When she's on the court, the Fever have a plus 9.1 net rating. They're 8-5 in games she plays. Without her, they're fighting just to stay competitive. She's not just their best player, she's the entire system. But can one player overcome everything working against this team? The injuries keep mounting. Sophie Cunningham's mom was so angry about her daughter's injury that she went on social media calling out Bria Hartley before Sophie made her delete it. The refs keep making questionable calls that always seem to go against Indiana. Teams know they can be extra physical because the whistle won't protect Fever players. There's also the mental toll this is taking. Caitlin Clark admitted she's never dealt with anything like this injury situation before. She played every game in college, every game in her rookie season, and now she's missed 23 games and counting in year 2. It's been so challenging. She said on a recent podcast, "I've never been through anything like this." The other players are feeling it too. They went from championship expectations to wondering if they'll even make the playoffs. They're watching teammates get injured every other game. They're playing hurt themselves because there's nobody left to substitute. This isn't the season anyone imagined when they added Stephanie White as coach and brought in veteran pieces to complement their young core. Yet somehow, some way, they keep fighting. When Sophie Cunningham went down, Kelsey Mitchell stepped up. When McDonald and Colson got hurt, Shea Petty appeared out of nowhere. When the refs refuse to protect them, they protect themselves and keep playing. This team has more heart than any roster in the league, and they're going to need every ounce of it to survive the next 2 weeks. The real question is whether the league will do anything about the officiating problem. Players are getting hurt because referees won't call obvious fouls and flagrants. The discrepancy in how games are called is destroying competitive integrity. When you can elbow someone in the face and stay in the game, something is fundamentally broken. WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert keeps saying they take player safety seriously, but the evidence suggests otherwise. 6 ejections all season in a league where players are getting knocked to the floor nightly? That's not taking safety seriously. That's enabling dangerous play. And Indiana, more than any other team, is paying the price for this negligence. Here's what needs to happen. First, the league needs to review how fouls and flagrants are called, especially involving the Fever. The pattern is too obvious to ignore anymore. Second, there need to be real consequences for dangerous play. A technical foul for an elbow to the face is insulting to the player who got hurt. Third, the refs need consistency. You can't call a game one way on Friday and completely different on Sunday. As we head into the final stretch of the season, the Indiana Fever are at a crossroads. They can either fold under the weight of injuries and biased officiating, or they can rally behind their exhausted stars and fight for that playoff spot. History suggests they'll keep fighting because that's what this team does. They don't quit, they don't make excuses, they just keep showing up and playing through whatever gets thrown at them. The return of Caitlin Clark looms large over everything. If she comes back healthy and the Fever make the playoffs, this becomes a story of incredible resilience. If the injuries and officiating finally prove too much to overcome, it'll go down as one of the most frustrating what-if seasons in WNBA history. Either way, this team has shown more heart in the face of adversity than should be humanly possible. Will the referees continue their biased treatment of the Fever? Can Caitlin Clark return in time to save the season? Or will this injury-plagued team finally run out of miracles? The next 7 games games will give us those answers. But one thing's already clear, the Indiana Fever deserve better than what they've gotten this season. From the injury luck, to the officiating, to the complete lack of protection from the league office. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because the final week of this season is going to be absolutely wild. Drop a comment below and let us know if you think the refs are deliberately targeting the Fever or if this is all just bad luck. We'll see you in the next one.